What's up there, YouTube? Kenny here, also known as SilentFan85. Welcome to an update video on ARK settings that may be able to help you. I run some new forums that I have for my silent ARK server. I recently put up a post that may help some people identify some budget cards that may better run ARK for them. I've also pointed out some settings which comes from logicalincrements.com. I read this article a few weeks back and it really kind of helped me. So I figured what I would do is throw some of these tips out there. Maybe they'll help you. I've got the menu up here to kind of show you where everything's located. And I'll go ahead and throw some suggested cards at you as well. First of all, let's go ahead and get to the cards real quick. The ones pointed out in the article, they mention cards such as a GTX 1063 gig with an i3 7100 CPU. There's also 2X GTX 70s and an i7 CPU. That's pretty costly. That's for 1440 though. For about a 1080p experience in ARK, a GTX 1070 with an i5 CPU. So that's just, it kind of throws some out there. They're a bit high dollar, so if you can afford them, they're worth the investment. But for those that don't have that kind of money to put towards a video card, I do make some suggestions on this post about it. The EVGA GeForce GTX 1050, and on the Radeon side of things, the Asus STRIX AMD RX 460. The reason I suggest these is that because, at least on Walmart.com, I don't know about any other websites, I didn't get a whole lot of time to check them out, but on Walmart.com alone, these are under $175. The cards I mentioned before tend to range from about $350 on up. So that's what you're looking at in that price range when it comes to the GPUs. CPUs will be about the same. I don't suggest any budget CPUs. If I did, it would probably be the AMD 8350 Black Edition. It's an 8-core processor. You can get it for maybe $150. That's the one I use. It actually works really well. Sometimes it can get a bit hot, but that's pretty much any CPU you're going to run into, to be honest. It really depends on your cooling. Cooling, I would suggest getting water cooling if you can. Try to have a professional install it, because obviously if you try to install a water cooler, something goes wrong. Water and electronics does not mix, so something to keep in mind. If you're going to do fan cooling, make sure your airflow is set up correctly. You can Google how to do that. I'm not the best at explaining how to do that. But what we are going to go through is, for those that can afford a card, we're going to go through some of the settings that is suggested by Logical Increments, and go from there. So this video may run kind of long. If it does, I apologize, but hopefully it helps you. So one key thing to remember with all this, okay? Number one, ARK is still an early game at this point, as of this recording. It's still an early access, still in beta technically. Looking at a 2017 release, I think later in spring or fall, somewhere around there. So with early access games, it is very hard to pin down a card that will help you also with the settings, because the game can still be kind of unstable when it comes to graphics. So it's something to keep in mind. But we'll go ahead and go over some of these. Some of these are just to improve your frames per second. They set a goal here of trying to get at least 60 FPS. I tend to run at about between 45 and 60. I have a GTX 1070, 8 gig Armor Edition. But with my old card, the 960, these help me considerably a lot. So let's go ahead and jump into it. To improve FPS considerably with no impact to visuals, you want to lower ground clutter distance and density. So right here, I have density all the way up, but distance all the way down. I know that seems weird. I'm actually still working with that, but a really good setting would probably be about right here, if you're trying to get the best FPS, but trying to get some grass as well. But I actually usually have it turned down. Density, the distance, I don't think it eliminates it in total, but it just kind of puts it in your general area, like probably within 2 or 3 build frames. So, that's something you can do. Use the high preset instead of epic. This can double your FPS and it looks good. Now, the presets are right here where it says graphic quality, low, medium, high, epic, and custom. So there's high right there. And it does give you recommendations right here. Low, GTX 660, medium, 770, high, 970, and epic, Titan X. Now, you may not notice any Radeon mentions in here. It's mainly because ARK is built for nVidia. But it still works on Radeon. So, you know, give or take, whatever you like, whatever fanboy you are, whatever camp you camp in. There you go. Now, to improve FPS by larger amounts with a moderate impact to visuals, these are what they suggest. What you want to do is lower sky quality. Your sky quality is right here. This shows the clouds, how they move, and stuff like that. Sky quality can be pretty demanding, especially with the sky engine they use. They're still having some problems with it, so they're still working on that. True Sky, I believe it's called. So you can lower that. That's where I keep mine at the moment. You can also lower terrain shadows and general shadows to medium. I've already done that here. This is one key thing to remember with graphics, is that most cards, in my experience, I could be wrong, but in my experience, shadows are the most demanding FPS gobblers that you'll ever deal with. Shadows demand the most out of a GPU. Again, in my experience. So it's something to keep in mind. If you're having FPS problems, lower the shadows. Most of the time, that's a good workaround. You may not get the shadow effects you like, and it may kind of take away from the experience of the game, but if you're playing an action game or a survival game like ARK, those FPSs will help you in dire situations, especially if you're in a fight, if you're running, so on and so forth. Because if you're in a very dire situation, and all of a sudden your game freezes and jumps to another direction that you didn't plan to, well, you're kind of in trouble because you didn't plan to do that. So you got to kind of work your way around. So there you go. Anti-aliasing. Now, anti-aliasing, depending on your card, won't have a really big impact, again, in my experience. But if you have a lower-end card, it will. Anything from, well, again, I had the 960. I think anything from 960 up. Even with the 960, whenever I had everything on Epic, I didn't have any problems. It made no difference. Whatever I did to the anti-aliasing, it did not change my FPS whatsoever. It always stayed fairly solid, so I don't think it had to do with anything anti-aliasing. Now, anything older than a 960, that is a possibility. And also, there is the medium preset. Okay, so that's something you can use as well. Now, some last resorts. So if none of these steps help you get a better FPS, a couple of things you can do. Lower general shadows to low, and use the low preset right here. Now, again, this is for GTX 660. Which is on low settings. This will look, it won't look that bad, but at the same time, it won't look like any of the videos you'll see on YouTube. Most of them anyway. So if you're looking for the stuff that you see on YouTube or in streams and stuff like that, for the high-end YouTubers or streamers, and they have a beautiful game with awesome shadows, awesome light glare, just making everything look perfect, just know that these people invest a lot into their systems. And most of the time, it's from the money they get from broadcasting and streaming that allows them to do that. Now, if you're a layman like I am and work a full-time job and you've got to save up for this stuff, low settings is probably your best bet until you can get a better rig or better components. So, just something to keep in mind. That's really about it. Aside from that, you might try also not running the game at 1080. Maybe try running it at 1280 by 720. You can actually do custom resolutions up here on the top where it says resolutions. You might also try 1600 by 900, which is a bit between 1080 and 720. So that might help you a little bit as well. So anyway, hopefully some of these helped you. If they do, be sure to like the video. If you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe. I do all kinds of videos like this from time to time. I do a lot of streaming nowadays as well. But for now, I'll say salute, and remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise, and happy hunting. See ya.